Edward Steichen became eventually known as one of the world's most renowned photographers. He's in the same league of Ansel Adams. But there's a story about Edward when he was 16. He saved up all of his money and he bought a camera. And he took 50 photos or 50 pictures with the first roll of film that he bought. And as it turned out, whenever he had the film developed, and some of us still remember what it meant to, turn in the film to get it developed, and you'd wait till it would come back. But only one picture out of the 50 turned out. And that one picture was of his sister sitting at the piano playing. Now, his father just couldn't believe, and of course this was in the early 1900s, he just could not believe that his son would waste money like that. But the story goes on to say that his mother insisted that that picture of his sister sitting at the piano was so beautiful that he needed to just go on and continue to let photography be his new hobby. And what's interesting, he stayed with it the rest of his life. When you look at an individual like Edward, it was a close call. And what tipped the scales for him? It wasn't his father's discouragement as spending more money or even wasting it, but his mother saying, "You have potential, and I want to encourage you to stay after it." It's interesting that the very concept and practice of encouragement comes to the forefront, and it almost like hits the scene with a big splash in the book of Acts. It's almost as if the New Testament canon itself says something like this: once the church began, encouragement becomes a way of life for the early church, especially for congregations and individuals who want to exhibit the mind of Christ. In Acts chapter 4, verse 36, it says, "Thus Joseph, who was called to be by the apostles, his name Barnabas, which means a son of encouragement. He was a Levite, a native of Cyprus. He sold a field that belonged to him, and he brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet." Now, though our entire lesson, we don't have time to focus on Barnabas, but boy, we certainly could make a good character study of Barnabas and his presence in the church, because every church needs at least one Barnabas. His name means the son of encouragement. And the gospel of Jesus Christ fundamentally has the power to encourage. Sometimes we experience discouragement, and it comes about because of fear that we face. There's the fear of knowing what to do in certain situations. We're not always sure. There's the fear of failure. There's the fear that replaces faith. But the power of the resurrected Jesus in our lives enables us to face our fears. It doesn't matter what those fears are. What Barnabas did by selling his field and turning the proceeds over to the apostles serves as a model for personal encouragement for each one of us to think about our own personal sacrifices for the kingdom. Encouragement is embodied in the very person of Barnabas. He puts flesh on what encouragement can look like. He knew that the early church needed it. Luke knew that the early church needed that story. We need it today. Encouragement in the form of another person. If I were to ask you this morning to take a piece of paper and reflect for a moment and write down the one person, and I know there may be more than one, but the one person that comes to mind that perhaps has meant more to you by way of encouragement than anyone else, you would be amazed at the power that encouragement has had in your life coming from that person. You see, this kind of encouragement helps us to see, or what we need to see to keep our commitments and to make our own sacrifices, all because we saw it in someone else. You see, Barnabas gave up control of his financial profit, sold his field. He took that check and he laid it at the apostles' feet. And he said, "Here, I want you to take this money, use it at your disposal and your discretion." This week I thought of something that I hadn't thought of in years. This reminds me of the time when my girls were at home growing up, and they would make little coupon booklets of things that we as parents could cash in and claim. And your children may have done something sort of like that in the past also. And I remember several times they would offer us as parents one that would say something like this: "I am yours for the day, just tell me what to do." And I always thought, wow, too bad I couldn't have that for 365 days out of the year. But you see, Barnabas's in the church help us to do that with Jesus. We see them saying, "I am yours, Lord, just tell me what to do." And it reminds us that our baptism and our commitment to Christ is almost as if we handed Jesus a coupon that said, "Lord, I'm yours, not just for the day, not just for the month or the year, I'm yours for life. Just tell me what to do." In Acts 13:15, it says, "After reading from the law and the prophets, the rulers of the synagogue sent a message to them saying, 'Brothers, if you have any word of encouragement for the people, say it.'" And this passage from Acts 13 is from the context of Paul and Barnabas. They're in Antioch of Pisidia, about halfway through their first missionary journey. And on the Sabbath day, they went into the synagogue and they sat down, and the ruler of the synagogue passed a message on to Paul, and he said, "If you have any encouragement or exhortation for the people, say it." Now, we have to make a couple assumptions here. Somehow the ruler of the synagogue knew that Paul was a Jew. However he knew, he apparently acted on a synagogue tradition. And that was to extend an opportunity to visitors to speak a word of encouragement when they would show up. I've had that kind of experience. Some of you may have also. In visiting black congregations, it is their tradition to ask a visiting speaker to say something. And I've learned if that's going to be my experience, I need to have a few notes in my back pocket, because they'll say, "We want you to say a word to the congregation." It's their tradition. This phrase that is used in Acts 13, word of exhortation, or word of encouragement, is the same one that the writer of the book of Hebrews uses in chapter 13:22 when he calls his whole book, the book of Hebrews, my word of exhortation. And when you look at that and the context in which it occurs both in Acts 13 and Hebrews chapter 13, two fundamental truths come out about words of encouragement and exhortation. First, it's founded upon the promised faithfulness of God. And that's made me stop and think about that this week, that my Christian life has as part of its foundational encouragement, and I'll talk about it among us here in a minute, but I am encouraged daily, if I'll think about it enough, by God's own faithfulness. God is faithful. He has promised. Secondly, he says, "Let it be known to you, brothers, therefore, that through this man Jesus, forgiveness of sins is proclaimed to you. And by him, everyone who believes is freed from everything from which you could not be freed by the law of Moses." So in our congregational life here at Highland View, we exhort and we encourage one another in different aspects of our life, both privately and together as the family of God. And it's based on the good news that God is faithful. He has given us the gift of Jesus Christ, the forgiveness of sins that we enjoy. We are a free people. In the book of Hebrews, these two truths lie behind every exhortation and every encouragement. When you go through the book of Hebrews, those exhortations are easy to spot because they start off with the phrase, let us. I've maintained for several years in my thinking and teaching that the modern church needs to recapture the power of those kind of exhortations, because such exhortations can spur us on to love and good works. Can you imagine what it would look like this morning if every one of us took the opportunity to respond to that ruler of the synagogue's request? If any of you have a message this morning of encouragement, exhortation for the people, say it. Well, thank you, Mr. Ruler of the synagogue. I think I will say it. Let us be like Barnabas and offer what we have to the Lord's work for His disposal. And if you were paying attention to Jonathan's prayer right before the collection plate went around, that is exactly what he prayed for. Let us be thankful for God and His faithful promises, and let us proclaim life and word. It's the freedom that Jesus provides. Now, I want to take this word of exhortation and encouragement and turn it toward Josh Ross and his coming October the 19th and 20th. And I want to consider his coming in light of his topic, all in. He's going to challenge and encourage all of us concerning our approach to the Christian life where we're all in. Count me in, all in. And he's going to say it in different ways to make that a serious call. Now, I want to be transparent here. I'm nervous about Josh coming. And here's why I'm nervous. If you will notice in your pew, not only do we have the information on the front where Josh is coming, but on the back, we need several of you to step forward and volunteer for some slots on Wednesday night and Thursday night so that, here's the purpose, so that young adults and parents who have younger children can come out here and hear Josh and not have to worry about what's going on in the back with them. So I don't want to set an age on this, but if your children are already left home and they're gone, we really need your help on that Wednesday and Thursday night to sign up. And already Friday, I got a phone call from some individuals that were on their way out of town for vacation. And they said, we want you to put us down. So already, K through grade 2, if you look on the back on Wednesday night for Sparks, we've already got a teacher for that age group. And now we would need, of course, 2 or 3 helpers or more for that age group. But we need teachers and we need helpers for each of the age groups and a game director for each night. I want you to prayerfully think about how you can assist us in making this happen. Now, if it gets you out of your comfort zone and you feel a little uncomfortable, that's okay. We will come alongside you and assist you and help you in whatever way that we can if you feel like this is something you need to step forward and do to help out. So let me encourage you. We're going to continue to have the ongoing call for you to be specifically involved to help out on those 2 nights. And I'm hoping and praying 1 month before he gets here, by September the 19th, we'll have all the slots filled. So please consider it seriously, and I will be following up. And this morning, I'd like for you, before you leave, if you really feel like this is something that you can step forward and assist with, please put your name on one of the slots and leave the paper in the pew, and I'll pick it up and I'll contact you. But I'm excited about this. And this is going to give us an opportunity to be all in before Josh gets here to talk about being all in. In Acts 15, 31 and 32, Acts 15 is an amazing chapter to me. I don't know when the last time you read Acts 15, but it's when people from Jewish background and people from a different Gentile background, there's a huge clash in the early church. They got to work this out. And in Acts 15, after what is typically been called the Jerusalem Council, there's some guidelines written up, sent out to the churches. And it's interesting because those guidelines are as basic and as simple as the apostles and the church could make it, so that there could be unity among people from such different, diverse backgrounds. And listen to verse 31. And when they had read it, and that's the letter that got written and circulated, they rejoiced because of its encouragement. And Judas and Silas, who were themselves prophets, encouraged and strengthened the brothers with many words. Do you know one of the most encouraging things in the whole life of the church is when people have differences and they come together, desiring to respect one another, desiring that God's will be done in that, and out of that experience can come encouragement, because everyone has learned how to listen to one another. Everyone has been on the same page, desiring to work things out so that God gets the glory. And Judas and Silas were right in the middle of all of that. And as prophets, they encouraged and strengthened the brothers with many words. So as we think about this particular lesson, I want it to serve foundationally as a word of encouragement. Not only in our church life, we need it every week, we need it every day, but also to encourage you to always keep up with. And you'll notice, I know on Wednesday night we do this, we're beginning to publish it in the Sunday bulletin too. We always have a list of upcoming events. Please be aware of those activities. Now, I know you can't make all of those, but be aware of them. Be praying for each one of those events. Find ways to be involved in some of those that maybe otherwise you wouldn't be. Challenge yourself. All of us challenge ourselves to take an extra step and be more involved, because the more involved you are, the more blessed you are. The more involved you are, the more greater difference you're going to make in the lives of other brothers and sisters in Christ. And the more involved you are, the more encouraged you become. So let's end with these three exhortations. Let us, like Barnabas, give sacrificially for whatever is needed at the moment. It may be financial. It may be like this past week when Mike Henley and Johnny Moore got the ball rolling to specifically help provide 20-gallon tubs that they needed down in Louisiana. Whatever the need is, let us give sacrificially to show that God is working in us and through us to make a difference. Secondly, let us encourage one another because of God's faithful gift of Jesus. Encouragement is not just, I don't want to say this, it's not just a good social practice. The New Testament looks at it as something deeply religious. I can encourage you because I'm free in Jesus. I can encourage you because I've been encouraged by the gift God gave me in Jesus. So finally, let us rejoice and let us be strengthened. And let this fall, as we think about all the things that are coming up, let us encourage one another and spur one another on to love and good works. And that kind of encouragement becomes the lifeblood of a church that can make a difference in whatever comes up, whatever the need is, whatever the challenge is, whatever the opportunity is. I just happen to believe that Jesus Christ, as our risen Lord, can live in each one of us in such a way that we know how to encourage one another. In fact, if you think about it yourself, think about how important and what it's meant to you when someone said a word of encouragement at the right moment, at the right time. And it wasn't much, but you knew they were genuine. You knew they cared. They said the right thing at the right time. And it was almost like wind beneath your wings as you're living out your Christian life. And that's our challenge this morning. As we end this lesson, if you have a prayer request, maybe the flip side of the coin is this week, you've had a very discouraging week, and you need a dose of encouragement from brothers and sisters in Christ who love you and care for you. And if we can help you in any way, whether it's by prayer or just walking beside you in different difficult choices you have to make, however we can do that, we stand ready to do it while we sing.